Okay, I think we're all set, and if I'd like to start, if you guys are okay. Good morning, my name is Mike Lynch. I'm from the Broadband and Cable Office in the City of Boston's Department of Innovation and Technology. Joining me here today on behalf of the issuing authority is the city's outside counsel for telecommunications, Gerald Lederer of the law firm BBK. This is the City of Boston hearing for the Open Video System License Transfer application of RCN Telecom Services of Mass and the license renewal for the same. Representing RCN Telecom Services of Massachusetts are Jeff Collison, Vice President and General Manager of RCN Boston, Thomas Steele, Vice President and Regulatory Counsel of RCN Massachusetts, and Michael Nilsson, Counsel to Stone Peak Infrastructure Partners of the firm Harris, Wiltshire, and Grant. Under Massachusetts updated open meeting law guidance, we're required to post this notice for the COVID pandemic public meeting rules. And please be aware that there is an audio and visual recording of this meeting being made and broadcast on Boston City TV, which is on Comcast Xfinity 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It's also live streamed at boston.gov/cable. Prior to starting today's meeting, I'd like to acknowledge, as we are, I guess, on the 1-year anniversary now of the COVID-19 pandemic, that Boston's cable providers have been very helpful to the City of Boston over the last year. They have maintained the FCC's Keep America Connected pledge for broadband and wireless providers. All three have offered versions of affordable broadband to city residents. RCN and Comcast both offer senior discount programs for cable TV, and all three providers contribute to a robust city network, BONET, which we use for city services, public safety, schools, libraries, and more. This is, at this point, the start of the City of Boston hearing for renewal and license transfer for RCN, and the transfer request is being made by Stone Peak Infrastructure Partners. Lastly, among the participants today is General Manager Glenn Williams from Boston Neighborhood Network Media. Some of you may know BNN Media as the Boston Community Access and Programming Foundation. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you, Michael.
Today's hearing has been duly advertised in the Boston Herald on March 3rd and 10th, as you can see, the clipping on the right. It has also been posted to the city website, Boston City Record, Boston City Clerk's public notices, and it has been duly advertised on Boston's PEG TV channels, that is BNN Community and News and Information channels, as well as Boston City TV. I should clarify today that RCN in Boston is an open video system, an OVS, if you will, not actually a cable license. However, we get substantively the same benefits from it, and a 10-year cable television license protects residents' customer service and cable TV operations, preserves the dark fiber that is in our city network, supports and broadcasts BNN media channels. Collectively, all three provide $10 million annually to the city for fees and for PEG support, and it provides residential access to cable broadband service, something that is not inside the license, it rather sits outside the license. On the right, please note a link to the transfer request by Stone Peak on that cable page, Broadband and Cable, Cable Competition Boston. Thank you. For those of you who may ask, this is sort of an illustration, if you will, of the area of the city of Boston that are covered by RCN service. And this is just a brief timeline touching on the history of RCN in Boston. RCN first entered the market about 22 years ago. It had a cable license in Boston with its partner at the time, Boston Edison. A few years later, things got challenging. RCN sought license relief and became an open video system in Boston. And approximately 10 years ago, RCN's ownership was transferred to Aubrey Partners, a Boston-based firm, and Yankee Cable. 5 years after that, RCN's ownership was transferred again to Radiate Holdings, which is a subsidiary of TPG Capital. Patriot Media Group, the senior management team which had previously been managing RCN, continued in the transfer to manage RCN. And just in December, Stonepeak Infrastructure filed the transfer intent for the RCN telecom services. And within their filing, which is called a 394, Patriot Media Group will continue to manage the Boston system. Under license transfer rules in this state and in this country, there are 4 factors coming from both state and federal rules, as well as the city license, that are considered in determining a request for transfer of ownership. And they are quite simply as delineated here: the managerial experience, the technical expertise, the financial capability, and the legal ability to operate the system. Today, the presenters for RCN and Stonepeak will address how the system might change, who is Stonepeak Infrastructure, how the transaction is being financed, how the system's ownership, I'm sorry, I think that's a duplicate, my apologies, who will manage and run the system. I believe that is Patriot Media Group, but if we could delineate that, that would be helpful. And what are the benefits of the transaction? And by the benefits, I mean to the city and to its residents. With that, I'd like to hand this over to Jeff Carlson, GM for RCN, Tom Steele, Vice President for Law, and Michael Nilsson of Harris, Wilshire, and Grannis on behalf of Stonepeak Infrastructure Partners. Gentlemen, I'll advance the slides as you let me know. And you on mute if you would like to unmute yourselves, Michael and Tom.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mike. Jeff was unable to join us. Technical issues prevented it, but I'm happy to be here primarily to get to the task of introducing Mike Nilsson, who is the representative for Stonepeak. I'll just say that I'm happy to be here again. As you noted, this will be the 3rd time. And we have another investment company coming in and looking to gain control of our company. So it's an indirect transfer. Mike will explain in some detail what's involved. I'm anxious to talk more about the renewal as we proceed through the hearing and the combined nature of the hearing for the transfer in the renewal. But for now, I'll turn it over to Mike Nilsson to discuss the transfer. Mike?
Sure, thanks so much. So I'm Mike Nilsson. I am at a little law firm here in Washington, D.C., and I represent Stonepeak, which is the transferee here. And by the way, I'm wearing a tie only because it's St. Paddy's Day. So to make it clear. So look, we have submitted a bunch of materials, and rather than go through those materials at length, I think what I'd like to do is very briefly, maybe in 2 or 3 minutes, just describe what I think this transaction is all about: the indirect transfer of RCN from one private equity fund to another, and talk about what this means for Boston residents and what I think it means in terms
Mike, Sherry, let me interrupt you just a second. Could everyone that's not talking please go on mute, because we're not hearing Michael clearly.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Great. So again, I'm just going to offer a fairly quick and high-level summary to talk about what this means for Boston and how we meet the so let's move to the next slide, please. So let's just start by what this means for the city of Boston itself, right? And again, this really doesn't mean anything at all because it is an indirect transfer of the ultimate owner of RCN. And what I mean by that is that RCN is going to remain. RCN is going to remain the franchisee. RCN itself is going to remain retain responsibility for compliance. And so RCN itself isn't going anywhere. It's just going to be owned by somebody different. So what I think that means is that in terms of the legal ability to operate a cable system, I think RCN's legal ability to operate a cable system is unquestioned. And I think RCN itself has its own financial records that demonstrate that RCN is financially capable of operating a cable system. And I should just add here, for Mr. Lederer's benefit, as we've discussed, this transaction will not add any additional debt to RCN. So again, I think we can rely on RCN's financials. So if we could move one more slide, please. What does this mean for Boston subscribers in the short term? Again, nothing at all. There are some times when private equity funds go around looking for sort of distressed investments that they think that they need to change a great deal in order to make things work. This is not that case. Stone Peak chose this investment in part because it thinks that RCN is a very well-run system. It thinks its operations are excellent. It thinks its management is excellent. So as both Mike and Tom mentioned, there are no plans to change the operations materially, and there are no plans to change the management, including Tom Steele, right? And so again, legally, what this means is that we can rely on the existing management, that is Patriot Media, in terms of the management qualifications to run a cable system and the technical qualifications to run a cable system, because the same folks are going to be there tomorrow that are there today. If we can go one more, please. But oh my God, who wrote that? Who wrote that header? Look, in the longer term, right? However, I think there are significant public interest benefits here because Stone Peak, again, unlike some other private equity funds, has a demonstrated history of holding on to its assets a little longer and of providing them with resources, right? And that's how it gets its portfolio companies to grow, and that's how Stone Peak kind of is able to do good by its investors, right? And so I think the plan and the ultimate goal here is to make additional resources available to RCN to improve it. Now, I'm not here today to say, exactly where those resources might be directed, nor am I, here to tell you exactly sort of how much those resources are going to be, because part of that depends on the co-invest process and a lot of sort of different things that have yet to occur. But I think the basic idea is that if you have more resources, you can do things like improve your network, you can improve your customer service, you can improve your overall operations. So the point of this transaction is to have an even better, even more reliable RCN that is already, again, very good. And so that's the hope. And the hope is that Boston subscribers will find themselves with a better, an even better alternative to Comcast, right? And the other incumbents. One last slide, please. And so just to sort of to let folks know, we participated, or RCN participated in an audit, and RCN and Stone Peak have agreed in principle with Attorney Lederer on some safeguards with respect to the ongoing capitalization of the company. We still have not crossed T's and dotted I's, but I think we're essentially there. I think Mr. Lederer would agree. And we have agreed to pay for the city's expenses up to $10,000 in conducting this review. And Mr. Lederer is very reasonable attorney's fees. So that's my little presentation. I think I made it in under 5 minutes, but I'm delighted to answer any questions anybody has, or in whatever order the city would like to proceed.
Actually, if I could, Mike, Mr. Lynch and Michael Nielsen, I just would like to clarify one point that you made, and everything you said is absolutely true. I just want to make clear that the audit was not conducted by Stone Peak or by RCN. It was conducted by an independent auditor that the city of Boston engaged. We actually engaged this auditor with the 3 other major metropolitan areas that are going through the same transaction. So we joined with the city of Seattle, Washington, D.C., and Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a large urban county just outside of D.C. to have a forensic auditor go through all the paperwork, all the corporate transactions. That's not something that Michael Lynch or I really have an expertise in. In fact, that came back with a clean report. Our auditor suggested that there were a couple of safeguards that we might want to put in place. And Stone Peak has agreed to those, as Michael mentioned. Have we signed the document? No, but you will see the document as part of the final transfer agreement, which we are committed to putting on the Boston webpage. So that was my only clarification. I wanted to make clear that this was not a self-audit by Stone Peak. This was an external audit that was done by the city of Boston in cooperation with some of our sister communities that are going through the same transaction. That's it.
Thanks, Jerry. Much appreciated. Michael Nilsson, thank you very much for that presentation. And before we move on to questions, excuse me one sec, I just have to, thank you. I just need to introduce at this time again, Glenn Williams from Boston Neighborhood Network Media. Glenn is the general manager. We had hoped that Justin Petty would be able to join us this morning as well, the board president, but a little technical difficulties for him as well. And I think Glenn can well handle comments from Boston Neighborhood Network. Glenn? Currently you're on mute, Glenn.
Hello?
Yes, Glenn.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that. As Michael said, I'm the general manager of Boston Neighborhood Network, the City of Boston's nonprofit, charitable tax-exempt public access production and training center. I'm here today to testify on behalf of BNN for this important community meeting on community cable and technology needs in the City of Boston. First, I'd like to thank Mike Lynch and the City of Boston and Mike of the Department of Innovation and Technology for this opportunity to share some of the things BNN has been doing during these challenging times. BNN also thanks RCN for its cable television commitment. It is their recognition and support of our mission that makes PEG, which is Public Educational and Government Access, the meaningful partner we have become to many throughout our community. BNN wishes to emphasize the great benefit to the general public and to the City of Boston from continuing strong licensing support for PEG Access and Boston Neighborhood Network. In Boston, we are fortunate to have Boston Neighborhood Network, which has provided community access to the cable channels for thousands of Bostonians for nearly 40 years. Continued and level funding support for BNN is crucial to continue our strong track record in providing training, production, and media access services. BNN has shown great strength as a center for the production of top quality and informational local programming about the City of Boston's public affairs, community, and public events. During this pandemic, Boston Neighborhood Network developed a partnership with the Boston Public Schools to provide their teachers with a tool to engage remote learning students with curricular-based programming to enhance their learning. We dedicated 9 a.m. to noon and 2 p.m. to 4, 5 days a week for this necessity. Now, the only way we have to judge the success of this partnership is through the reaction from the teachers and our video on demand analytics. And what we've discovered is there's been thousands of VODs, students returning to the pages and the programming. It's been very, very successful. From 7:30 to 8 p.m., 5 days a week, we recruited various high-profile individuals to read bedtime stories to our younger viewers. Mayor Marty Walsh and the Patriots' Julian Endelman come to mind as some favorites. One of our proudest programming accomplishments is the extension of our weekly program, Extra Help, a homework help online hotline call-in program for Boston Public School students. This past year, we helped students live on television prepare for entrance level exams in math and English language learners accomplishing their goals. Though our studios have been closed, we continue to provide our members with Zoom classes to continue providing their vital link to their communities. We also carry many of our nonprofit webinars and programming. It's been very, very successful. People have been using the facility. BNN collaborates with the City of Boston to provide vital programming for the city, as well as other community events and political forums. BNN also provides production resources for Boston residents to produce their own programming. An important aspect of our mission is to provide the citizens of Boston a platform to express themselves freely. This is why the free Zoom classes are made so readily available. Nowhere else but on public access cable television can Boston's residents see such a broad and high quality range of Boston-specific community programming. BNN studios and community access channels are a priceless First Amendment outlet. They are what Congress has called the electronic soapbox, providing a unique outlet for public access and the exercise of our First Amendment rights. In addition to a strong production center, prior to the pandemic, we have shown great strength in our training center, offering a broad range of classes in television production, as well as special programming for youth and seniors, and customized training workshops for nonprofits. We also provide valuable job training opportunities for interns from many of the area colleges. A closing comment, if I may. Boston Neighborhood Network would like to request that RCA display our programming in high definition. It is, at times, difficult to promote ourselves as a quality 21st century media production facility if the production outlet to the viewers' homes is only available in standard definition. In conclusion, we emphasize that it is BNN's view that the city, with a rich history of voices raised to create democracy and a long history of leadership in community media and access, should continue its leadership in the provision of community media. Without the support of the City of Boston and cable licensees, we would not have been able to serve so many Boston residents over these many years. This support should continue on a level funded basis to ensure a level playing field is maintained going forward. Thank you very much for allowing me to spend a couple of minutes with you, cats. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. We appreciate that contribution. At this time, I would like to prepare a check with, see if there are any public comments that need to be made. As I believe everyone knows from the notices, there is an opportunity for written public comment at the link that is on your screen now. I'm sorry, Jerry, yes?
I just wanted to clarify for everyone listening, as well as the representatives of RCN Stone Peak. The request from BNN for our programming to be delivered in HD TV is a request that is being made in the renewal process. It's not part of the transfer process. Now, we're doing them together, but it's one of these silly things where just for legal purposes, we need to make clear what's going on. We're the city to deny the transfer. We would not want anyone to claim that the denial was based upon an RCN refusal to provide HDTV. So the HDTV request is being pursued on behalf of BNN and the residents of Boston, but it is being pursued as part of the renewal process, not the transfer process. And we expect to hear good news on both fronts, but I just needed to make that clear for the record.
Thanks, Jerry. Much appreciated. So actually, we have a series of questions, Tom and Michael, that we would like to ask, I guess, Patriot Media Group, RCN, and probably the petitioning ownership group regarding the renewal. There are a series of commitments that RCN has made over the years to Boston, and we'd like to clarify them now. As mentioned at the front end of the hearing, RCN serves about 10 to 20,000 customers in 8 of Boston's neighborhoods under this comprehensive open video system agreement with the city. RCN's presence here in Boston offers not only cable TV, but also high-speed internet and phone services. And it has been able to provide residents with some limited competitive choice for cable, internet, and phone service in these areas. Under the existing Boston terms, RCN has sustained a $10 a month basic rate for seniors and an overall basic rate of $17.50. In addition to that, RCN has partnered with the mayor's Wicked Free Wi-Fi initiative, offering backhaul support to that platform. RCN has also provided fiber to the city's network for approximately 10 city facilities, and it has built a video return for the Boston City Council's cablecast facilities and offered channel 82 as a fifth access programming channel for government use by the City Council. As a addition here, and as you just heard from Glenn and some clarification from Jerry, at this point, the city is asking, as Boston Neighborhood Network has suggested, for the availability of high definition HD television channel access for community access television. Those are the two channels, community and news and information. We recognize that RCN has expanded in Dorchester with capital investment utilizing existing stranded plant over the last, I believe, 8 years. Tom, you could clarify. And RCN has offered 2 fiber strands between their Bedford Street presence at Eversource and 43 Hawkins to interconnect different fiber networks available to the city. And Tom, I was just going to, having recited these, I just wanted to acknowledge that we understand these correctly and that these are elements of the renewed license that will continue for the benefit of the city of Boston.
Yes, yes, Mike, you summed it up well, and we definitely agree.
Very good. Okay. Jerry, I know we had a series of questions and a report is being prepared. Are there any questions at this time that you'd like to ask?
I'm sorry, Mike, it was directed at me.
Yes, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I'm very satisfied with both the presentations and the responses. With that one clarification, I'd almost, at the risk of being a bad negotiator, I'd like to publicly say thank you to Tom. What we just asked for are significant benefits, and your acquiescence shouldn't sort of be just rolled up like it's no big deal. Those are significant commitments, and on behalf of my client, the city of Boston, I'd like to recognize them. Thank you.
And I might add, Mike, if I may,
Yes.
we are willing, in response to Glenn's request, we would be willing and happy to provide 2 HD channels for BNN for the city as part of the renewal.
Well, as a representative of the end users, Tom, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. We have got a response back from people who have said things to us like, gee, it'd be nice if I could see that performance or see the kids' artwork that's being displayed at some galleries and stuff in a better definition. This is a large step forward, and we are grateful and very appreciative of that. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. Thank you, Michael, as well. I'd like to see in turn, I think actually we had one question from a citizen, Michael Bennett, is it? Ethan, I don't know if you've been able to turn audio over for Mr. Bennett. Okay, so I'm just checking with Master Control. I'm not too sure. I think what we might do is we'll reach out to Mr. Bennett. We'll get that question in writing. We have left the record open for this hearing through March 19th. We'll include it at that time. At this point, unless someone has closing comments, Tom, I offer you that opportunity. I believe that we can close this video portion of the hearing, leaving the record open until the close of business on Friday. Tom, anything in closing?
Mike, could I just explain one thing to everyone? Under federal law, the city of Boston has a limited amount of time, exactly 120 days, to either approve or disapprove transfer. If we do nothing, then the transfer is deemed granted by the federal government. Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Steele both outlined a number of improvements or safeguards that their company has committed to in exchange for this transfer agreement. If we do not process this transfer within that 120 days, the transfer goes through, we lose those safeguards, we lose those improvements. And so if you're looking at the calendar and you're wondering why this is being done so quickly during a pandemic, it's because we are acting within the time frame that the federal government provides us. So if you do have an issue that you want to raise, please, please, please note the shortness of your opportunity to speak. It is March the 19th. It's not that we're trying to cut off any discussion. We're simply working within the time frame that federal law permits. And if you're wondering where that 120 days went, most of it was eaten up by the auditor needing to go through all the books of the various entities that were in the process, and then the negotiating process to put in place the safeguards. So I just wanted to explain that because I didn't want anybody to think that this is being rushed for a rush sake. No, it's being moved expeditiously because federal law requires us to do that, or we lose the opportunity to impose the safeguards that we've already been able to achieve. I'm sorry, Mike, I apologize for adding that at the end.
No, thank you for the clarification. I believe something similar happened 5 years ago when the closing was around the Christmas and New Year's holidays. So good point to make. Thank you. Mr. Nielsen, thank you for your presentation. Glenn Williams, thank you for yours. John Steele of RCN, we appreciate your continued support for Boston during the RCN operations. And with that, I'd like to close this video section of the public hearing, leaving the record open until Friday. And after the close of business Friday, we'll be posting new materials on the city's website at the link you see on your screen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.